Hello and welcome to day 129 of 365 days towards racial change. My name is Tomlins Back. Pleasure to be with you again. We're going to kind of breeze through our introduction here about our black issues and American and whatnot because it's story time today. Like I said, I want to kind of speed up the Uncle Tom's Cabin because we're going to come into some very dense portions as I finish the book. But first, let's get to the introduction. This project has opened up incredible new insights for me. Well, a piece about life, not much has changed, but to articulate these things and find outlets has done amazing things for me emotionally and spiritually. Two thoughts emerge as I continue this project. As you heard many times, first thought has two parts. First part is, does the black mind, does the slave mind still exist here in America? Are black people still perpetuating an attitude of slavery, of submission, um, of help, of wanting welfare, knocking on the doors of white power to be let in through civil rights, social integration, such like that. Second part is the other side of the coin is white entitlement being passed along from generation to generation here in America. The white folks, boy, do they just naturally have essentially less issues to navigate, which makes them so much more how can you say, have a life that appears to be so much more at ease. Forget about the majority of white people having success and favor, but more so like just living in such a way as they just know, they just pass along. They reinforce their communities in positive ways, constructive ways, creative ways, in which black people may not or may struggle with seeing materialize in black communities and black life. Second thought is there's a concern for financial literacy, understanding disposable income, how money works in America, investments, what's an asset liability, having more financial conversations, understanding disposable income, understanding how people and organizations hostile to black growth and success are using us. Do blacks understand themselves as a consumer class? And that black business struggles, it's already hindered from within with maybe the black mindset that we talked about before, but also it's hindered without pressures from non-black communities to keep black folks as chasing the carrot, so to speak, carrying the water, doing the menial work, the lowest work, you know. So that's some of the financial literacy I'm finding, that I'm more well armed and making better decisions now that I'm starting to understand these aspects uh, of life that in a sense are available to me publicly in America, but their availability is concealed, some by design, some by ignorance. But financial literacy, very important. I'm inspired by a man named Dr. Claude Anderson. He speaks about these issues as far as knowing the history, origins, roots of these issues here in America. I read 3 of his works. First work was A Black History Reader, 101 questions you never thought to ask. Black labor, white wealth, search for power and economic justice. And Powernomics, search his national plan to empower Black America. Find Dr. Anderson at Powernomics.com and the Heritage Institute in Washington, D.C. Behind me, you see the hashtag #US2 symbol. It's Black women coming together, supporting one another. It's a response to the hashtag #MeToo movement. Interesting that women uh, can find reasons to kind of be split along color lines. Go to Black Enough, BLAGGENUF, kind of a Black Facebook. And if you found me here on YouTube, World Wide Web, then you are technologically literate and you can find your community, your support, your flavor, opposing views right there at your fingertips. All you need is a Wi-Fi connection. Like I said, we're going to get into story time again. We're going to start speeding this up a little bit. Uncle Tom's Cabin by Harriet Beecher Stowe, very phenomenal work out of the mid-1800s, pre-Civil War. Book banned in the southern states for obvious reasons. As we go through, you find, because it really sheds a bad light on slavery, abuse, rape, um, separation of families, human flesh being used to pay for a slave master's bad debt and bad gambling. Um, you just see this guy, white guy, doing the math in his mind. He's looking at a hand. He knows his hand is a winner, and he says, "Oh hell, I got a couple slaves. I'll put down a few slaves. I don't have the cash on me right now, but here's some slaves." Wow. But that's real. That was real. So this book's banned in the South in slavery times for obvious reason, because it shows that these slave masters, that the slave industry institution was not all this benevolent, altruistic, cozy existence. You got people the further south you went, the agricultural demands for tobacco, cotton, other raw goods and materials increase exponentially, and the treatment of the slaves decreases to the same degree. Work slaves to death. No retirement program. No rest home. What happened to the poor slaves? I read a book, I forget what it was, about how they would treat some of the slave women when they were aged, when they were no longer good for sex or bearing children or working. How this book said that oftentimes a good-minded master would build some shack or lean-to and put her out there, and that would be where she finished her days at. We from that scenario, as much reality as that is, you get tales of witches out in the woods and things like that. But who knows? Who really knows? You don't get the feedback from the slave community. What did older men do when that older black male slave could no longer lift that bale, could no longer, does he sit around and um, take part in, the resources? Is he cared for? Does the master do that, or is is their demise more I don't know, have more mystery to it? You know, makes me wonder. We just don't have the feedback of that. But I can say I can probably safely say the majority of those retiring slaves probably didn't have lives that ended well. You know, severe stroke or heart attack was probably a blessing in those points. Uncle Tom's Cabin. Okay, chapter 11. The title is In Which Property Gets into an Improper State of Mind. Before that, I want to just have this on record. We're reeling from another shooting in Colorado. I don't know if I mentioned that yesterday. There was this mysterious trip with the national secretary taking the press club to Iraq, impromptu meeting in Iraq, and things have sort of quieted down, and that makes me wonder about the financial situation there in Iraq, or is it quiet enough where maybe a central bank is in place and that Americanized commerce is beginning? You know, might even be a McDonald's there already. You know, that's a financial literacy concern. I'm not going to go into it now. We're talking about something else. But I just want to put it in there. Think about that. Think about any country we had problems with which we are now friends with, Vietnam, um, you know, and even go way back, England. You know, we had a Revolutionary War, but boy, we're buddy buddy now. And what's that? What's the financial roots, structure, supports of that relationship now? Okay, Uncle Tom's Cabin, in which property gets into an improper state of mind. Now here we've left off. Tom's on his way south. It's pretty benign and innocent traveling so far with Mr. Haley, the slave trader. So he's on his way and he's shackled laughably because Tom is not the kind of person to run away, speak bad about anybody. He discourages violence against his oppressors and all this, a lot of Christ-like attitudes. He's extremely conditioned for this. It's admirable, I guess, but it's like, dude, I don't know if I could ever get to that level. uh, you never know until you're in the situation, right? But now we're going to turn our attention to another slave that we've uh, ran into before, but let's kind of set the scene. The scene opens up. It's a Kentucky hotel hall, and if you can think about a Daniel Boone character, a lot of leather and moccasins and beaver hats and things like that, a big old long gun carried around. You know, they come in to the inn, straight to the ale, lean their long rifle to the side. They see their old buddies and stuff. You know, they've been trapping or exploring and hunting, a lot of rugged, woodsy stuff. And that goes to, you know, black people need to like get a handle on that. You know, I know a lot of white people. They purposely go into the woods, challenge themselves, do a lot of hunting. Like growing up, you know, my kids in my class would take time off. You were going hunting and stuff. I'm like, wow, you know, I'm happy. My dad worked at a chicken. Uh, they called it a chicken coop in a farmer's market. So I was glad when Dad brought home one of them chickens that had been basting all day. But these little white guys are going out hunting and trapping and woods camping stuff. My biggest experience with that was I lived in a woodsy town and a lot of trees around my yard. My biggest, you know, we build forts, we tear down old trees and stack them up and make a fort, you know. These guys did real hunting. That's just how the scene opens up. All right. They're all sitting around. A gentleman shows up. His name's Mr. Wilson. He's known in the parts, and we're going to find out Mr. Wilson plays into this today's narrative quite well. Uh, so after we get cozy, big fire, ale, long rifles and stuff, an announcement is put in a public space about a runaway slave. His name is George, and George has a brand of an H on the back of his right hand. Now, remember, and this is the George that increased the production at some company that he was at. He's a slave. His master hires him out, and the master gets the proceeds of everything. George even invented something to increase production, and that became a patent, and all of that went to his master. We find out that upwards of 5 or 6 other companies use George's design, and his master is just being enriched. But his master is jealous, and um, he treats George badly, even to the point of branding an H on the back of his hand. The branding, uh, it's in a conspicuous space, not uncommon for slaves to be branded on their face. It's to show. You can't hide that. If your hands are covered, you might have a fighting chance. But if your face is branded, they know you're someone's property. If you are presenting as free, you better have some papers or some good backup, or you're going to be in big trouble. So that's a slave. It's announcements that George has run away. And George is after his wife Eliza and his little son Harry. He knows they've gone north trying to get into Canada. Um, and it's also, getting back to this intellectual property. In America, we're big about that. I don't like it because uh, I'm just so idealistic. Face it, you create something that's yours. But like I was at when I was doing this interpersonal violence education and prevention, hanging out with all these white women and stuff like that. I won't go into the long story, but part of my time there, I created a program to collate and compile feedback from presentations and stuff like that. Took me a couple of years to write thousands of lines. I wonder how many lines that program is. But if the program had been sold or whatever, that would have been property of the organization. I would have no rights to it because I created it with their equipment in their space and all that stuff. But it's okay. I locked it out with a code. They can sue me if they ever do anything. Really, it's just the bare bones of some bells and whistles of programs that are already well written, more user friendly. That was my gum and duct tape program. It works the same way though. Intellectual property. But too many. I mean, you get disclaimers. I don't even. I'm very creative. I don't send my work out anymore to people because the first thing they do is say, no, you don't. What you submit is ours. Well, if it's so it's like they're doing me a favor for me doing all this work for them. But if they take it and score with it, I'm just out on the outside because I've agreed to their disclaimers. But they want me to be so excited that I'm published or participating or something like that. I just don't do it anymore. No, it's mine. get it copyrighted. And this is an encouragement to you if you're creative. Don't send your work out if you're not getting paid. If you don't expect a return, if you don't expect some positive feedback or whatnot from the venture or endeavor, then go ahead, just give your stuff away and don't complain if they score with it. But don't do that. And and they got little industry myths about it being improper or immature to say your work is copyrighted. No, protect your work always, all the time. If they're going to have those disclaimers, don't deal with them at all. Don't give them your work. Stop giving your work away and being so happy you were published. Don't do that. Don't do that. Get paid. Get paid. Or else they would write it themselves. You know, that's very evil what they're doing with that. I'm talking about written work, but any kind of work. If you create it, get paid for it. Okay, announcement, branding. Now this Mr. Wilson who has come in and all that is just sitting there. He's chatting, and this Spanish-looking fellow comes in. And the Spanish-looking fellow is very bold and free in the public, and he actually approaches Mr. Wilson, asks Mr. Wilson to come up to his chambers upstairs. This guy has some lucrative digs at the inn. And when they're together alone, it's George, all right? George looks he passes as maybe a darker Spanish gentleman. Now, the mulattoes, quadroons, octoroons, light-skinned black folks or dark-skinned white folks, tended to be more affiliated with closely with white society. They were a preferred people. The darker you get, the more removed you are from the mainstream, from privileges and access to wealth and resources. So these middle of the road, darker white people or lighter black people were a growing society, and they were created from the white slave masters, laying with the black slaves. Now you don't have a big record of it going the other way. Black men sleeping with white women. That it wasn't as prevalent and free and easy maybe as in today's society. But that white slave master, he had his own harem, created his own workforce even. So that was some of the creation of these mulattoes, octoroons, quadroon people, right? So George, he knows how to live the part of that. Eliza does too. We kind of see her hinting at that. And we'll find others later in the story who play the part well of an educated, even if they were slaves. Now back then they were any amount of blackness in the person disqualified them from participating in society as a white person. So the darkness, either they are a Spaniard, Hispanic, or they have some black blood in them and are disqualified from participating as white people. But they're educated, probably work closer to the house and inside the homes, less so out in the field or in the harder works. So George exposes himself. Mr. Wilson is astonished. Mr. Wilson is very troubled. He says George is breaking the law. George is like, I'm a man just like everybody else. I like see George is. I feel like I have that mind of George as well because it's like I start thinking about. I see this at myself doing this at work. These white managers who are they're good guys. I actually like these guys a lot, but they're not. They just don't keep up with the managing this that a system that could be incredibly beautiful. They just need more tweaks. It takes them too long to make a decision. By time to make a decision, it's obsolete. But now they've made the decision that is no longer viable. But I sit back and like I said, I don't offer my 2 cents because I don't get paid manager salary to suggest stuff. In my experience, people don't like me suggesting this stuff any damn way. I really get negative. Uh, I get negative feedback when I say, "Hey, you want to check this out? Take a look at this." People, people, especially white folks, don't like that. So, but we'll talk about that another time. Now George is running away. He's fed up. He's finally left because he knows his mother's been abused. He's heard his sister whipped. All these horror stories that he relates to Mr. Wilson that motivated him just once or for all. Now he puts up with a lot, you know, and this is from he's just exasperated, and he's like, I just can't take it anymore. There are men just like me. Why am I being treated so unjustly and harshly? I improved this man's wallet, his life. He doesn't even have to own a plantation anymore. He can just collect the intellectual rights from these patents that I created in the world. I get none of it in all this. You branded my hand. I've seen my mother and sister abused. You just get more and more, and it's just not enough. You just keep digging and taking and abusing. It's like whoa, whoa. And, that's what makes these Colorado shootings. Colorado is one of the most got to be becoming one of the most wealthiest states in the nation, and these you see these white folks committing crimes. Black folks doing crime is not sure it's not permissible, but I can understand a distressed black community having a short fuse and maybe not being altogether sane all the time, you know, and to having stress and being distressed, right? It's amazing. Like there's murder and high crime in these areas and stuff, but it's almost understandable because people are struggling. But where do white privileged teenagers like they've not even begun to be oppressed and grinded by the system. They're still sheltered in these large homes, access to resources that are unimaginable. Yet they want to shoot up places. Wow, it's well, it's an evil. I'm not even going to go much into that, but that's what George is up against. There's something inherent in white society, but even going back to slavery, that's just so enigmatic about having all that power and privilege and still grinding on another individual, another soul. That's incredible. So George, we end the chapter with George saying, he's heading north. He knows Eliza and Harry went north, trying to track him down. He says he ain't going to go back to slavery. He will die before he ever lets himself be bound again. I believe him. He's exasperated. So he tells Mr. Wilson to send his love, get a message of love and care to his family, as if he does not make it to be with them free in Canada. We're going to find out how well George does on this journey here as we go through Uncle Tom's Cabin. I hope you're enjoying these periodic moments. We're going to pick it up and whatnot. As some good stuff coming up in the book. I'm Thomas Nyback. I'm over my time. That's day 129. Thanks, y'all. See you again soon. Bye-bye.